Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the HGLRC Veyron 35, and yeah, as you can see there, got a motor with only one wire left, and one of the prop guards has kind of come off, unfortunately, and I'm at least in some part to blame for that. I got a little lackadaisical about what I was hearing and some lessons that sometimes we learn that are quite painful, so we have those takeaways to come from this video at the very least. But I also have flight footage that we can look at, and I flew it quite a bit before this kind of all happened, and I have some takeaways from that. Start with the motors that it comes with. It comes with the 2105.5 3600 kV motors. Those are 4S motors. The props that it comes with are the ducted 90mm 5-bladed props from Gemfan, and yeah, you do get an extra set. The flight controller is the Zeus 35 Pro. It's an all-in-one, but if you can't tell, it's not that Whoop all-in-one sort of shape. It's more rectangle. And that flight controller is rated 3 to 6S. And it's a 35 amp ESC on that all-in-one, with an F7 processor and a 35 amp ESC. The VTX that's mounted below that all-in-one flight controller is the Zeus Nano, which is their power switchable up to 350 milliwatt VTX. FPV camera is the Caddx Ratel. It comes with two different HD camera mounts, but it doesn't include the top portion for your camera, just the base. It does also come with the camera ring protection. Got the HGLRC Hammer right-hand circular polarized antenna here on the back. And mine is the FR Sky version, so I have an RXSR tucked up underneath there. It comes with an extra long screw and a nut for the other camera mount, spare screws and nuts, an extra battery strap, extra foam to put around the edges, and some double-sided tape to secure the foam, a manual for your receiver and on the all-in-one flight controller, a fly-safe card in 2 languages, prop direction card, quality assurance card, and stickers. It weighs just a touch under 285 grams. With the camera mount and the screw, it weighs just about 285 grams. Oh, there it is. I flew it a lot with this Insta360 Go 2, which brings the weight up to 311.5 grams. I also flew it on this 850 milliamp 4S Race Day Quadrants battery, which brought my flying weight up to 410.5 grams. Motor post to motor post, it's more than my calipers will go to. I would estimate at least 156 millimeters. We've got 2 different body plates here. Together they come in at a little over 5.25 millimeters. Looks like the one that's definitely carbon fiber is 2.5 millimeters. And the one that may or may not be carbon fiber looks to be about 2.5 millimeters too. If we look closely, I think that yellow layer is probably carbon fiber as well. The yellow gives it a little bit more flair and style. We're going to start with the slow cruisy flight for the true CineWhoopers out there, or cinematic sort of slow cruisy sort of flyers. And if you're not well into drones, you might be wondering about the change. You know, we still do, and to a lesser degree, still see the traditional CineWhoop with the big prop protection. We've gone to kind of this more narrow profile on the prop protection. I think that, you know, what that is just a new product, so new products always have a little bit of extra excitement, but they also fly more capable. So if you're not doing real steady go stuff or stabilizing your footage highly, yeah, it can be useful. Plus you can get a little bit more fun, and some people just like to have a quad with prop protection on it. So this is obviously not our goggle view. This is the HD camera view, the Insta360 Go 2, and it does have the FPV stabilization. I would call this flight pretty slow, cruisy, trying to be smooth, and it was a nice day. This is actually a flight that I just happened to catch. You can see from the predominant line of the leaves in the yard, my son and I had been out working on the leaves, and then we ran out of space in the trash bins, as well as the garbage trash bags we had run out. We only had like 2. So I sent him to the hardware store with a little bit of money to pick up some more bags. I had some batteries charged, so I thought I could do some flying while he was out. Temperature was relatively warm. I believe it was just about 60 degrees on this particular day, if my notes are correct. And I think the main takeaway from this, outside of the crash side of things, is that if you're probably comparing this to other 3.5 millimeter or 90 millimeter, 3.5 inch or 90 millimeter prop, CineWhoopy sort of, you know, more versatile flyers, maybe the GEP RC product or a different vendor altogether. This one is more powerful, but it's also less efficient. So, and that's not an unusual trade-off. You can get more power, but it's hard to maintain that efficiency when you get more power. I think it also weighs quite a bit more. I think it was 40 grams more than the GEP RC 3.5. I might be mistaken about that. I weighed it, but now I didn't write it down, so referencing that was probably a poor choice. These are really kind of pitching us as they're able to carry the big full-sized GoPro. You know, you don't have to go naked with them or anything like that, and they're going to be capable of carrying that GoPro. This also comes in an HD version, so if you weren't interested in carrying a GoPro but you wanted a higher resolution that you typically get with an FPV camera, this is possible. This flight goes on for 3 minutes and 55 seconds. I don't think it's quite necessary to see the whole thing, as I don't think anybody's ever complained when I've cut the slow cruisy flights short. So if you do want to see the entire flight, because I do advocate for entire flights, I don't like clipped up review flights. That's just me. It's my bias. That's my personal preference, so I don't generally do that. So I'm not going to clip this up. I'm just going to end it short. Let's move into the goggle view. So this is what we actually see in the goggle. And the Caddx Ratel is actually a pretty nice camera. It's a micro-sized camera, so it's 19 millimeters wide. And so this is what you see in the goggles, at least very, very close to what you see in the goggles. Sometimes the DVR will change what we see just a little bit, whether it's the video breakup or the colorization. Of course, you can always change those settings within our goggles if your goggles do have those settings. But wanted to make sure I wasn't confusing anyone. You never know who's watching for the first time FPV. We don't see that HD view, at least not in the quad that I have. We do have others, and if you buy the DJI Vista version, you will get that. But that was a view of our FPV footage. So now let's take a look at what led up to this. Okay, as you can see here, this flight actually came a little later. More leaves on the ground. We've actually had to been out a few times. I think we're going to go back out tomorrow, which is Sunday, and do a bit more cleanup. But I wanted to show you this section of flight because it gives you a better idea of the faster capabilities of the quad. You can kind of see the power, the carry, the throw. Again, I'm not carrying a GoPro 10. Could this carry a GoPro 10? Yeah. Pretty much all the 3.5 inchers will carry a GoPro 10 fairly well. But depending upon your all-up weight, your battery size, the performance is going to vary in some degree. And so this is going to give us a sample of what it was like to fly it more faster and aggressively, and it's pretty capable. Again, it's not going to have long flight times because I found it to be very powerful, but I also found it to actually be less efficient than I expected. Oh, and had a bounce, and then I disarmed midair. So that was crash number 1. All right. Again, HD view here with the Insta360 Go 2. Take it off, and a little bit sloppy on that. Got a little bit out of shape, kind of off into the open space rather than dead on over the top. But more fast flying. This won't take long, don't worry. It's a little bit more footage than we saw in that first flight, but this is the flight where we're going to see where I get a little bit sloppy for one, and also we are going to see what I believe to be essentially the fateful crash that resulted in the quad kind of exploding in air. And then we'll discuss kind of where I see myself as far as the amount of blame that I should take. I think we could probably agree that we'll wait till we get there. There's no reason to go over it right now. The crash isn't coming up for another minute, so let's just enjoy what we can of the flight. I bounced it off the roof of the house there. Fingers getting a touch cold probably. This is the fifth flight on this particular day. Unfortunately, you can see, if you can see, I'm sitting over there and I'm wearing a coat. It's a light jacket, I should say, so it wasn't terrible cold. It wasn't in the 40s, but we had temperatures that were much lower than the original slow sort of cinematic cruisy flight that I originally started this video with. But this gives you another measurement for, some of the things that I typically do: shorter punch outs, longer punch outs, chimney side punch out, garage side punch out, doing some short little swoopy sort of things over that barbecue area. I think I started with a flip or a roll right there, just kind of a snap job. And nope, yeah, I wanged that tree and my camera's looking straight down now. Well, shoot. So this is the crash where I think, yeah, that's probably what caused our problem. And the reason why I say that is because when we crash, unless we can't retrieve the quad, we're stuck behind a fence or we're up on something high and we have to kind of turtle mode to get ourselves back, I typically go and I pick them up. It's pretty rare that I turtle mode, and I try to show you that in videos where I do turtle mode, specifically with the Super Micros and their 5 amp ESCs. But in this particular case, I didn't give the quad a good inspection. My suspicion is that when I hit that maybe I had seared off one of the bolts, or maybe multiple bolts. You maybe didn't notice it, but one of the screws it was still stuck to the motor magnets. I'll just leave it there for now, safekeeping. But I did not give it a thorough inspection. And after we crash, we need to give our quads a good once over. You know, we need to make sure everything's firm, everything's still in place. I didn't do that. I think if I had done that, I probably would have noticed that either some screws were missing, or the motor was coming loose, or this whole assembly over here was coming loose. And then I probably could have continued to fly it and explore it. But unfortunately, I failed in that regard. And, well, let's watch. Okay, I promise this won't take long until we get to the catastrophe. So I take off, and everything seems normal. I don't necessarily hear anything. I do that little flip. It responds normally, just as expected. And when I did that punch over the house, I thought I heard something. I wasn't certain of what I heard. And if I'd had the foresight to say, hey, you just crashed, you didn't look the quad over, probably should bring it in. But no, I don't do that. I continue to fly, and I'm kind of listening for something, and then I punch out over the bush. Uh-oh, something's wrong. Yeah. Pretty much fell out of the air. And it's time to do the walk of shame and look at the damage. Of course, I don't know in the goggles the damage, but I have that heart-sinking feeling that something has gone horribly wrong. So unfortunately, there's not a whole lot more to talk about. I didn't have enough flights on it to really pull off even a full flight. I kept crashing. And I think I might have had about 12 flights. And, you know, I showed you the first crash. Then I had a few minor bumps. Nothing that, you know, I really took much concern of. But I hit that tree that one time, and it wasn't, you know, full force. It wasn't like I was, you know, going plaid through the air and I winged into the tree. I was going at a good speed, and I did a tight turn over there, kind of checking the prop wash handling or how well it redirects itself. And then once I whip around that tree and I bonked it, you know, we've got a fair bit of weight here, you know, with the battery and everything. What do we have, 450 grams? So that's where our damage is. Again, my greater takeaway outside of, you know, the looks and feels of this is if you're comparing this to something like the GepRC Synlog 35, that this one's more powerful, but it's also less efficient. So if you're flying it faster, more aggressive, and you're using an 850 milliamp battery, I wouldn't expect to get more than maybe a minute 45 to 2 minutes if you're flying it like I was in the faster flight. Of course, if you're flying it slower like I was in the first flight, you can get about 4 minutes. Of course, something like this, depending upon the HD camera that you're carrying, you could go up in size in the battery. I'm a micro guy, so having batteries over, say, 1,000 milliamp is actually kind of unusual, and usually it's just goggle batteries that are over that. So having a 4S battery that I can mount on this and fly it, and it's reasonably new. I've got some old Hobby King batteries that I use for goggles, specifically the DJI goggles. They're old and tired. I wouldn't rely on those for this. So make sure if you're looking at this, make sure you're doing your homework. You're seeing a bunch of videos. You're taking in a lot of information. See if other people have had crashes and they had any breakages. But I think, again, I'm at fault, at least in some part. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the comment section below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.